Right, so I think it's about time to get started. I'll just check in the chat to see if anyone's here. Looks like nobody's here. Let's see if there is a tweet sent out. Oh, there is somebody here. Yay! Lemmy Adams. How are you? Sorry, I didn't see that there was any attendance. Oh, 7 people. Okay. Oh, 8. All right. Now we can get started. Yeah, so hello everyone. This is one of the developer streams for the Sentinels of Earth-Prime Kickstarter. I always have to catch myself when I say that because I've said Sentinels of the Multiverse so many times in my life that that's what my tongue naturally wants to do and I have to stop it. So yeah, as part of the Kickstarter, I am composing a new theme song for Sentinels of Earth-Prime. And it was in the background of the Kickstarter video. But today I would like to go over a little bit more details as to what's going on with that. So for those of you who don't know, Sentinels of the Multiverse is the game that Sentinels of Earth-Prime is based off of. We made a digital version of that starting in 2014, and it's still going strong today. But it's considered like a complete game at this point. We've covered both the base game and all its expansions. And way back in 2014, I made a theme song for Sentinels of the Multiverse that goes a little bit something like this. And forgive me for those of you who have heard it a million times in the game, but I think it's good context for where I went from there. Yeah, so that's what the Sentinels of the Multiverse theme is. Sort of a inspired by 90s cartoon theme songs, obviously without any lyrics in this case. And it has 4 distinct sections. There's this sort of intro here, and then sort of like the main followed by a B section, which is sort of an expansion on this. And finally, a more less active section to kind of bring it all back to the start. And so in doing the Sentinels of Earth-Prime theme, I wanted to try and keep it structured very similarly, but not make it, obviously the exact same song. The people who created the Sentinels of Earth-Prime physical game said that they would like it more in the style of the Justice League from the early 2000s. And that one was definitely much more orchestra heavy, particularly brass. So that was sort of a good place to start from. I took the Sentinels themes structure. It's approximately the same tempo and stuff too, but I changed it and changed some of the elements. So here in the original theme, you can hear it starts out with some strings, and then the guitars come in. And so this one also starts out with a sort of an orchestral intro as well. So I noticed some of the instruments were cutting out there. Maybe my RAM's getting a little full, but those issues usually fix themselves as it goes. But so you can hear that there's some similarity there, but instead of the da 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 da, this is da 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 da. Yeah, and definitely more brass. Actually, I don't even know if the original has any brass, but this one does right here. It still features the strings at the beginning like the other one did. Yeah, there's the bass cutting. Let's hear it again. And then this is the main part here. And again, I have sort of this A section, B section, and then C, which brings it down a little bit. The B section in particular is pretty similar. And so, yeah, that's the actual main part. Now you'll notice that I actually separated the intro and the loop. And the reason I do that is because even though the intro stops here, sound doesn't usually like stop immediately. Like there's actually a bit of what we would call a tail. If you watch the volume monitor here, you'll see that it doesn't actually stop here. It'll still be active a little bit after that. And I'll just show you what I mean. So you can see that there was still some sound left in it. And so what I need to do is make sure that when the intro plays the first time, that tail still overlaps here, right? Because you don't want these instruments to suddenly stop and then this to suddenly start, because that can be a little disjointing when you're listening to it. And so I want this to overlap here, right? But when it loops, I don't want to hear that part because the intro isn't playing anymore. And so you would be hearing the tail of something that's not even playing. Instead, I want to hear the tail of this, which is, again, you'll see it keeps going even after it hits the last note. See, it's still going down there. And so after the first loop, the tail comes from that. And so when I put it in the game, I need two different starts to hear. One that's the tail from that, and one's the tail from that. So that's why these are separated here. But that's not a thing most people have to worry about, but it might be interesting to know if you do music for games yourself and want to have this sort of intro and loop structure. So just going to check the chat here. I'm glad people aren't tired of the Sentinels theme yet. So anyway, so what I usually do when I start a new piece of music, I didn't do it for the intro. I guess I just kind of winged that one. But what I usually do is just play something on the piano. And I don't really care that it's perfect or exactly the way that it'll sound eventually. And I purposely use a pretty basic piano sound. Like this is just like a free plugin that doesn't even, it doesn't sound like a real concert piano or anything like that. And I basically just make a little skeleton, usually the melody and the bass line. And the idea is that it should be strong enough that even listening to it like that, it's like, okay, this is going to work. Obviously, I wouldn't release it as a finished product, but the idea is if it sounds good when you just have the basics, it will probably sound better once you put all the interesting stuff and good sounding stuff on top. And so anyway, this is what the piano sketch sounds like. So there you can hear it. It's pretty basic, and it's just a bare skeleton, so that if I ever forget like what my idea was, or where I am in the song, or what comes next, or whatever, I can always refer to that. And so I usually leave that on until it is no longer necessary, once I've added other parts. So you can see that there are a lot of sections here. They're all expanded, but often one thing that I'll start with is drums. And the reason is that it's pretty easy to get them up and going quickly. Even if I just have one bar that's, I could literally just pull that through the whole piece of music, and as long as it stays in 4/4, then it'll work. It won't sound particularly interesting, but it'll work. And it also provides as a metronome, so that when I'm recording other parts, rather than actually having the metronome going, I can sort of listen to that instead, and it's just a little more interesting. So here's what it would sound like with the piano sketch and the drums together. Oops. Just a sec. I muted the music. There we go. So as you can hear, it kind of allows us to easily hear the beat, and again, it's one of the easier parts to add in quickly, because it repeats itself so much. Doesn't have any melody or harmonic information, so it can work with all kinds of things. From there, I can kind of go in any order. I don't always say I always do this one and then I always do that one. But the general idea is to try and replace this, right? So, but part of it is finding out, okay, I have the melody and I have the bass, but I don't have anything that's in between. And by that I mean there's not much harmony going on other than what's going on between the bass and the melody, but a lot of music has chords in between, and so that fills the space between the low end and the high end, which is where the melody and the bass usually lie. So one part I could start at is to actually fill that in and decide, okay, what are the chords that go along with this? Where is it major, where is it minor, and stuff. A lot of that is implied by the other two parts, but not necessarily always defined. So then I can start with rhythm guitars. And before I do that, I just want to point out what I'm using, because other people who do this kind of work are sometimes interested what other people are using. So I use the same drums that I used in the original track. I separated them into whole whack of tracks, but really that's not necessarily. I probably could have just done it on one or two. But that's just how the project was, so I just worked with it. And I actually used 2 drum sets for that, and then sort of balanced them out so that it wasn't definitely one or the other. And these just came with Contact Complete, so it's the studio drummer. And the way drums work is you just, each key on the keyboard represents a different drum or symbol or whatever. And so you just hit the one you want at the velocity you want at the right time. So yeah, one of them's the studio drummer, and then the other one is session. Sorry, they're both studio drummer, but this one's the session kit, and then the other one is the garage kit. So they sound a little bit different, and I just kind of mix them together. So after that tangent, going back to the harmony, so this is where I filled it in with rhythm guitar. And this is one of the few rhythm guitar strummers that I actually really like. It's made by Ample Sound. They have lots of different guitars. I usually just use the metal one for anything rock related. And then so I filled those chords in. You can see I put my chord ideas at the top here. And I use theory notation rather than like F major, C minor, whatever, because then it's key signature agnostic, right? So if I suddenly decide, oh, actually this is too high, I need to move the whole thing down, I don't have to change all these chords because they're just relative to whatever key it's in. If you don't know much about music theory, that might look a little odd, but I find it's a pretty powerful way to understand what's going on in the music. Anyway, here's what the chords I chose to go along with this sketch are like. One thing I'd like to point out that I like to do is I have two rhythm guitars going. They're both playing the same thing, and they're both using the same rhythms here. But I have two different amps. So I have two different instances of guitar rig here. And then I have one on the far left and one on the far right. So these two are different. And that gives it a wider sound, right? So you're hearing one sound on the left. Sorry, and I'll just isolate this by itself. And then you hear this one on the right. And so together they provide a nice wide sound. And I really like that, and it helps to leave the center so that it can have more of the melody stuff. Okay, so now that I have these parts, I'll just isolate them again. So then, yeah, it's like, okay, well, what do I start replacing? I can replace that bass, right? Because I just kind of do. So I have two basses going on. One is long notes in the brass, and then one is an actual electric bass. And so once I replace the bass, I don't need the piano one anymore, because I'm going to use that one instead. So for the bass, I just use the Scarby MM bass. I like it. It sounds like a real electric bass. Like if I played this part on my actual electric bass, it would sound pretty similar to this. So I use that one a lot. And then for the low brass, I just used a basic da capo. This one's, you just press one and it'll play like a brass section. This wasn't because this is just meant to like sort of fill things in a little bit. I didn't get too fancy with that one. And let's see. So now I can replace the melody. And I did that with electric guitars. Again, I used the Ample Sounds one. But unlike the rhythm guitars, which I think sound really good as they are, I'm not super pleased with the way that the lead guitars sound as they are. But I think that's okay because the intention is to have especially the lead guitar replaced by a real guitarist playing like it was in the original theme song, because it'll just sound way better. So I didn't spend too much time trying to make it sound as good as it could. And because this is playing the melody, now I can turn off the piano sketch melody. Yeah, I don't really like the way that sounds. It sounds fake to me, which I suppose it is. But again, I didn't put too much effort into not making it sound fake because it's going to be replaced. Anyway, and then so all that leaves here is the orchestra, which again I expanded a bit since the Sentinels of the Multiverse theme. And so yeah, there's full string section and a trumpet, trombone, French horn, brass section. So for here, the brass here plays the melody. And that's supposed to go along with the guitars to make it sound a little bit more full. Right. So yeah, and same here. But at this point, the strings join in, and the reason I do that is a contrast of textures. There's a lot of different ways to provide contrast in music, which is definitely something I want to do when I compose. And one of those ways, so one of them is to just change what the melody's doing at that point, which it does. But another one is also to change textures. So bringing the strings, high strings in here will do that. And then here, it switches, the strings drop out, and now the trumpets really come in. And I might even bring them out a little bit more than that in the final one. But yeah, just kind of contrasting those elements sort of helps to distinguish one section from another. Another part that I have down here that's a little bit more, might be a little bit more subtle, is string arpeggios and chords. Oh, and by the way, for these instruments, I'm either using the Contact Orchestra library or East-West Hollywood instruments. But then, yeah, down here, there's sort of a fill-in to the melody, particularly in these string arps here. But they sort of help with the rhythm and moving things forward. And so it's sort of like an effect, right? Like da 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 da. So let me just play the guitars and that part here so you can hear what I mean. So they kind of it's almost like a kind of like a little counter melody. I don't want it to be too loud though, because then it can get confusing as to what's the melody and what's the counter. So I bring it, subdue it a little bit. This part, it's allowed to stand out a bit more because the other one, the melody's just holding a note, and when the melody holds a note, that's a good opportunity for something else to kind of come forward a little bit more. But while the melody's active, you don't want too much of that, or it can just get confusing for the listener. Yeah, so I think that about covers all the parts. So let's just give it a listen, and yeah, I'll have to stop it between the intro. Well, I guess I won't stop it, I'll just let it keep going, but there is a little bit of a break between the intro and the loop, just so just to let that tail go. We go. Again, it's not final, especially because there's I'd like to have live instrumentalists for the guitars and fix up some of the mixing and things like that. But that's pretty much the Sentinels of Earth-Prime theme song. I'm curious if anyone has any questions or anything they'd like me to talk more about or whatever. So I'll just leave the chat open there. All right. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat right now, so hopefully that means I covered everything. And yeah, that's about as much as I had to show today. Hopefully that was interesting. So there's going to be a lot of original music coming for Sentinels of Earth Prime. For each of the environments, there'll be a unique piece of music that's about 4 to 6 minutes long, usually. And then for each villain, there's going to be a theme song. So that stays in line with the way that Sentinels of the Multiverse works. That you hear the environment while you're playing a game in it, and then if you lose to a villain, you hear their theme song. And so I haven't even started on those yet, so I don't really have anything to show. I haven't even gone into the ideas stage yet. But I'm sure they will be coming as we are continuing to develop the Sentinels of Earth Prime game, and I look forward to sharing them with you when they're done. So thanks for those of you who dropped by, and thanks for everyone for supporting the Kickstarter. We made it, and it's nice to be able to provide more Sentinels content for all you fans who just keep wanting more, and that's good, because we're happy to provide lots of playtime for you. So yeah, thanks everyone, and have a great day.